late in the year 129 AC. Mindful of the promises he had made to the Maiden of the Vale, Jane Arryn, he ordered Prince Joffrey to fly to Goldtown with Tyraxis. Monkin suggested that Jace desired to keep his brother far from the fighting. This did not sit well with Joffrey, who was determined to prove himself in battle. Only when told that he was being sent to defend the Vale against King Aegon's dragons, did Joffrey grudgingly consent to going. Rhaenea, the 13-year-old daughter of Prince Daemon by Rhaenrya Velaryon, was chosen to accompany him. Known to history as Rhaena of Pentos for the city of her birth, she was no dragon rider, her hatchling having died some years before, but she brought 3 dragon eggs with her to the Vale, where she prayed nightly for their hatching. Lady Rhaena's twin, Vale, remained on Dragonstone. Long betrothed to Prince Jacaerys, she refused to leave him, insisting that she would fight beside him on her own dragon, though Moondancer was too small to bear her weight. Though Vale also announced her intent to marry Jacaerys at once, no wedding was ever held. Monkin says the prince did not wish to wed until the war was over, whilst the Full Mushroom claims Jacaerys was already married to Sarah Snow, the mysterious bastard girl from Winterfell. The Prince of Dragonstone also had a care for the safety of his half-brothers, Aegon the Younger and Viserys. Their father, Prince Daemon, had made many friends in the free city of Pentos during his visits there, so Jacaerys reached across the narrow sea to the prince of that city, who agreed to foster the 2 boys until Rhaenyra had secured the Iron Throne. In the waning days of 129 AC, the young princes boarded the cog, Aegon with his hatchling Stormcloud, Viserys clutching his dragon egg, to set sail for Essos. The Sea Snake sent 7 of his warships with them as escort to see they reached Pentos safely. Prince Jacaerys soon brought the Lord of the Tides back into the fold by naming him the Hand of the Queen. Together, he and Lord Corlys began to plan an assault on King's Landing, with Sunfire wounded near Rooks Rest and unable to fly, and Tessarion with Prince Daeron in Old Town. Only 2 mature dragons remained to defend King's Landing, and Dreamfire's rider, Queen Helena, spent her days in darkness, weeping, and surely could not be counted as a threat. That only left Vhagar. No living dragon could match Vhagar for size or ferocity, but Jacaerys' reasoning was that if Vermax, Syrax, and Caraxes were to descend on King's Landing, that even the hoary old bitch would be unable to withstand them. The Full Mushroom was less certain. 3 is more than 1, the dwarf claims to have told the Prince of Dragonstone, but 4 is more than 3, and 6 is more than 4. Even a fool knows that. When Jacaerys pointed out that Stormcloud had never been ridden, that Moondancer was but a hatchling, and that Tyrax was far away in the Vale with Prince Joffrey, he demanded to know where Mushroom proposed to find more dragons. The dwarf claims he laughed and said, "Under the sheets and in the woodpiles, wherever you Targaryens spilled your silver seed." House Targaryen had ruled Dragonstone for more than 200 years, since Aenar the Exile first arrived from Valyria with his dragons. Though it's always been their custom to wed brother to sister and cousin to cousin, young blood runs hot, and it was not unknown for men of the house to seek their pleasures amongst the daughters and even the wives of their subjects, the very small folk who lived in the villages below the Dragon Mount, tillers of the land and fishers of the sea. Indeed, until the reign of King Jacaerys, the ancient right to the first night had been invoked, made perhaps more often on Dragonstone than anywhere else in the 7 kingdoms, though good Queen Alysanne would surely have been shocked to hear of that, though the first night was greatly resented elsewhere in the realm, as Queen Alysanne had learned in her women's councils. Such feelings were muted upon Dragonstone, where Targaryens were rightly regarded as being closer to gods than the common run of men. Here, brides thus blessed upon their wedding night were envied, and the children born of such unions were esteemed above all others, for the lords of Dragonstone often celebrated the birth of such with lavish gifts of gold and silk and lands to the mother. These happy bastards, said to have been born of Dragonseed, and in time became simply known as Seeds. Even after the end of the right to the first night, certain Targaryens continued to dally with the daughters of innkeeps and wives of the fishermen, so Seeds and the sons of Seeds were plentiful on Dragonstone. It was to them that Prince Jacaerys turned, at the urging of his fool, vowing to any man who could master a dragon would be granted lands and riches and dubbed a knight. His sons would be ennobled, his daughters wed to lords, and he himself would have the honour of fighting beside the Prince of Dragonstone against the pretender King Aegon II and his treasonous supporters. Not all of those who came forward in answer to the prince's call were in fact Dragonseeds, nor even the sons or grandsons of Seeds. A score of the Queen's own household knights offered themselves as dragonriders, amongst them the Lord Commander of her Queensguard, Sir Steffon Darklyn, along with squires, scullions, sailors, men-at-arms, mummers, and 2 maids. Grand Maester Monkkin calls this the Sowing of the Dragonseeds, and credits the notion to Jacaerys himself, and not the full mushroom. Others prefer to call it the Red Sowing, given the amount of blood that was spilled. The most unlikely of these would-be dragon riders was in fact Mushroom himself, whose testimony claims, at length, of his attempt to mount Old Silverwing, one of the dwarf's most amusing tales. However, in truth, there is no basis to this claim. Dragons are not like horses. They do not easily accept men upon their backs, and when angered or threatened, they will attack. 16 men lost their lives during the sowing of the seeds. 3 times that number were burned or maimed. Steffon Darklyn was burned to death while attempting to mount the dragon Seasmoke. Lord Gorman Massey suffered the same fate when he approached Vermithor. A man called Silver Dennis, whose hair and eyes lent credence to his claim to be a descendant from a bastard son of Maegor the Cruel, had an arm torn off by Sheepstealer as his sons struggled to staunch the wound. The cannibal descended upon them and drove off Sheepstealer and devoured the father and sons alike. Yet, Seasmoke, Vermithor and Silverwing were accustomed to men and tolerated their presence. Having once been ridden, they were more accepting of new riders, and Seasmoke, who had once borne Rhaenrya Velaryon, took on his back a boy of 15 known as Addam of Hull, whose origins remain deep matter of dispute amongst historians to this day. Addam and his brother Alan, 1 year younger, had been born to a woman named Merilda of Hull on Driftmark, the pretty young daughter of a shipwright, a familiar sight about her father's shipyards. The girl was better known as Mouse, for she was small and quick, and always underfoot. She was 16 when she gave birth to Addam in 114 AC, and barely 18 when Alan followed a year later. Small and quick as their mother, these bastards of Hull were silver of hair and purple of eyes, and soon proved to have sea salt in their blood as well, growing up in their grandsire's shipyard and going to sea as boys before the age of 8. When Addam was 10 and Alan 9, the mother inherited the yard upon her own father's death, sold them, and used the coin to take a ship to sea herself. As a mistress of a trading cog, she named Mouse, a canny trader and daring captain. By 130 AC, Merilda of Hull owned 7 ships, and her bastard sons were always serving on one or the other. That Addam and Alan were Dragonseeds, no man who looked upon them could doubt, though their mother steadfastly refused to name their father.